You ever see someone who lights up every room they walk into? That was Tisha Campbell in the 90s, not just on screen, but in real life too. That energy, it wasn't just acting, it was magnetic. She had the kind of presence that made you stop flipping channels. But underneath all that shine was a woman carrying stories no one ever bothered to ask about. While we were laughing with Gina on Martin or cheering for Sydney in House Party, Tisha was keeping quiet about something so big it nearly swallowed her whole. The truth? Her silence wasn't a choice. It was survival. Before the sitcoms, before the fame, Tisha was just a girl hustling in New York. Auditioning, grinding, trying to carve out space in an industry that didn't exactly roll out red carpets for Black actresses. She had talent for days and charm that couldn't be faked, but Hollywood still treated her like a background extra in her own success story. Then came House Party in 1990, a low-budget film that blew up way beyond expectations. $2,500,000, 0 cents budget, $26 million, 0 cents box office, a smash. And right at the center of it all was Tisha. Her dance scene, iconic. Her performance, effortless. But guess how much she made from it? After taxes, agent fees, and management cuts, $4,000. That's it. $4,000 for a role that helped define an era. That was her paycheck for being the emotional anchor of a movie that became a pop culture touchstone. It doesn't stop there. While House Party made headlines, the people who built it, especially the women, were left behind. No royalties, no bonuses, not even a thank you card. And yet, Tisha never complained. She kept going because that's what you did if you wanted to keep working, especially as a Black woman in the 92. By the time Martin came around in 92, she was a household name. The chemistry between Martin and Gina, electric. They became the couple every Black household rooted for. Young, funny, stylish, they were goals. But behind that on-screen love story was a completely different reality. Tisha was walking onto set every week with a knot in her stomach, holding back tears between scenes, just trying to keep it together. What people didn't realize was that her smile was work. The jokes were work. Every scene she pulled off so effortlessly. It was done while pushing down a growing storm inside her. She was being mistreated, not just ignored or dismissed, but violated. Tisha wasn't just the female lead, she was the one holding the show together emotionally, giving Martin Lawrence something to bounce off of. But still, she was treated like an accessory, disrespected behind the scenes, used for ratings but never truly valued as a creator, as a person. And it wasn't subtle, it was blatant, it was hostile. By season 5, the cracks were too deep to hide. Suddenly, fans noticed Tisha disappearing from episodes, and when she did appear, there were no scenes with Martin, not even one. Their final episode together was edited so tightly that it was clear they weren't even on the same set. And people started to ask, what happened? Then it hit, the lawsuit. The truth came out like a grenade in the middle of Hollywood. She accused Martin Lawrence of sexual harassment, verbal abuse, and physical intimidation. It wasn't tabloid gossip, it was real, it was documented, and it was devastating. But even after everything she endured, Tisha didn't become bitter. She didn't burn it all down. She just wanted to be heard. She wanted to be free. And that's what this story is really about. Not the scandal, not the gossip, but the cost of silence and what it takes to finally speak. The set of Martin might have been full of laughs on screen, but off screen it was something else entirely. Tisha described it later as walking into a room where she had to shrink herself just to survive. It was loud, male-dominated, competitive in a way that made you feel like you were never truly safe. When she spoke up, she was ignored. When she pushed back, she was punished. And when she finally reached her breaking point, she had no choice but to take legal action. The lawsuit Tisha filed in 1997 wasn't some PR stunt. It was a desperate move from someone who had run out of options. She wasn't trying to ruin careers. She was trying to save her own life. The details she laid out were horrifying. On-set groping, invasive kissing written into scenes, verbal abuse so intense it left her rattled. Crew members whispered, some looked away, others pretended nothing was wrong. That's what power does. It makes people complicit even when they know better. Martin Lawrence denied everything, claimed it was a contract issue, dismissed it like it was a misunderstanding, but something changed after that. You could feel it. The tension in the final episodes, the carefully edited scenes, the lack of eye contact, it all told a different story. And then came the silence. The case was settled out of court just months later. No public resolution, no justice. Just an NDA, a piece of paper that locked Tisha's voice away for decades. She couldn't speak, couldn't name names, couldn't defend herself while the world kept laughing at reruns of Martin. It was like being erased from your own story. And Hollywood? It moved on like nothing ever happened. Tisha disappeared from the spotlight. She wasn't cast in leading roles anymore. No more sitcoms, no more big moments. She became one of those "where are they now" names, even though she hadn't gone anywhere. She was just silenced, and that's the part people forget. When women speak out in entertainment, especially back then, they don't get medals, they get exiled. Martin Lawrence, meanwhile, spiraled. Fame had already started messing with him, but after the lawsuit, things got worse. One day he was running down Ventura Boulevard with a gun, shouting at the sky. Another day he was collapsing on movie sets, overworked and dehydrated, refusing medical help. He was banned from Saturday Night Live after an offensive monologue. He clashed with co-stars, he burned bridges, and still, studios kept cutting him checks. Hollywood protects the money, not the people. His fall wasn't dramatic. It was slow, quiet. He still starred in hits like Big Mama's House and Bad Boys, but the charm was gone. There was a darkness underneath it all. He never apologized publicly, never acknowledged what happened, just brushed it off whenever someone dared to bring it up. "We don't need to talk about something that didn't happen," he told GQ in 2020. Like the past could just be rewritten. Tisha, meanwhile, lived with the weight of silence. She smiled in interviews, took smaller roles, raised her family, but every time someone asked about Martin, her eyes said more than her words ever could. You could tell the pain was still there, not just from what happened, but from what was never allowed to be said. It wasn't until decades later that she started cracking the door open again. One podcast, one interview, one moment at a time. She didn't come back bitter. She came back brave. And this time, she didn't care about NDAs. She didn't care about being difficult. She cared about the truth. And once she started speaking, the industry had no choice but to listen. It wasn't a press conference or a viral headline that brought Tisha Campbell's story full circle. It was a quiet moment, a reunion hug between two friends who hadn't spoken in years. Tisha and Tashina Arnold, Gina and Pam. A friendship that had survived everything except the silence. That hug meant more than most people realized. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about healing something the world had tried to fracture. They had met as teenagers, broke together in New York, auditioning for roles that barely existed for Black girls at the time. They shared rent, ramen, and rejection. And when Martin blew up, it wasn't just a job. It was the dream they used to talk about in their tiny apartment. But fame didn't protect their bond. When the scandal broke in 1997, the pressure to choose sides became unbearable. Tishina was caught in the middle. The sisterhood that had carried them both began to quietly unravel. One missed call became a year, then 2, then 8. It wasn't betrayal, it was pain. It was fear. It was a system that made women feel like they couldn't hold on to each other and their careers at the same time. But when Tisha's marriage ended in 2020, she looked at her life and knew what was missing. Not money, not roles, but connection. She called Tashina, no drama, no explanations, just "I miss you," and Tashina said, "Come over." That was it. Just like that, they found their way back. From that moment on, they became a different kind of duo. Not sitcom characters, not just former co-stars, real-life partners in something bigger. They started showing up for each other, not for the cameras, but for the cause: mental health awareness, empowerment for young Black women in entertainment, speaking in rooms where truth used to be unwelcome. Tisha no longer needed the industry's permission to speak. She didn't ask to be invited to tell her story, she owned it. Every podcast, every interview, every workshop she led wasn't just about what she went through. It was about what other women are still going through right now. She wasn't the exception. She was the blueprint. Her story became a reminder that survival doesn't always look like screaming into a microphone. Sometimes it looks like holding your silence until you can survive the fallout, and then choosing to speak anyway. Martin Lawrence still hasn't admitted to anything. He hasn't apologized, maybe he never will. But that's not the point anymore. Tisha doesn't need his apology to heal. He's already done the work. The public reunion between them in 2022 during the Martin special was strange. Polite smiles, carefully chosen words. "We've forgiven each other," she said. But if you looked closely, forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freedom. At 55, Tisha Campbell is no longer just a face from a classic sitcom. She's a survivor, a mother, a mentor, a woman who walked through fire and came out the other side, not untouched, but unbroken. She once said, "If I ever got a second chance, I wouldn't stay silent again," and now she's making good on that promise. Every time she tells her truth, she chips away at the culture that tried to silence her. Every woman who hears her story realizes they're not alone, and every young actress stepping onto a set knows now that someone before her had the guts to say enough. Tisha Campbell's legacy isn't Gina Waters. It's the woman who gave her voice back to herself, and by doing that, handed a mic to everyone else who never had one. And no matter how long it took, she made sure her truth wasn't just heard, it was felt.